Sound check one. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Audit and Finance and Administration Committee meeting for Thursday, October 23rd. We do have quorum present, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please remember that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Welcome to our newest members, Councillor Pauls and Councillor Cooper. I believe this is your first meeting. I might have missed a couple, but if it is your first, welcome. Order, please. Thank you. No ceremonial activities. Approval agenda. Mover and second to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Maureen Wilson. Councillor Beattie. Show of hands if there are no amendments from committee members. Thank you. Carried. Declarations of interest. 3, 2, 1. Okay, moving on. Approval of minutes. October 2nd, 2025. Mover and second to adopt the minutes of the October 2nd, 2025 meeting. Councillor Cretch, Councillor Wang. Discussion on the minutes. Show of hands, please. And that carries. Delegations. Members are reminded that questions of delegations are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. 6.1, Matt Johnson and Patrick McElhoyne. Hopefully I said that correctly. Urban Solutions Planning and Land Development Consultants, respecting development charges applicable to the development at 4 Studebaker Place via site plan application DA 17155. Please come forward. Whenever you're ready, please go ahead, Patrick. My apologies if I butchered your name.
Thank you, Chair. It's McElhoyne. Pretty close, though.
Not bad.
Better than most. Okay,
English is not my first language, so I appreciate that.
So I'm here. I'm just going to give a high-level overview of what we're talking about and asking for today, and then I'll turn it over to Matt for the details. So we're talking about the development of 4 Studebaker Place. This is an environmentally remediated brownfield in the north end, and there was previous demolition on the property, which gave rise to DC demolition credits. So I think, as we all know, those credits expire after a certain period of time. The developer has been diligently seeking approvals for the project to build an industrial building. They obtained conditional site plan approval in May of 2021 before the expiry of the DC development or demolition credits. So since 2021, there's been several resubmissions, 5 resubmissions, finally obtained final site plan approval in spring of this year. Unfortunately, that's after the expiration or lapse of the DC demolition credit timeline. So what we're here today to do is give you some more details and ask for the city's grace to extend the DC demolition credit applicability period to cover the pulling of the building permit for this property, which is ready to be pulled. And the city's DC bylaw specifically provides City Council with the ability to extend this timeline. So I'll turn it over to Matt to get into the background, then happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Patrick, and good morning, members of committee, staff, and the public. Matt Johnson, Registered Professional Planner with Urban Solutions. So 4 Studebaker, as the property is now known, is on the lands of what was 440 Victoria Street North, home of the former Studebaker and Otis elevator plant. Here you can see the aerial. That was a 650,000 square foot building that received demolition permits in July and September of 2012. With that came a demolition DC credit in the amount of $7.6 million, using the old rate at the time of $11.74 per square foot. Since then, we've gone through a period of site remediation, 2 years of demolition, making way for the new industrial subdivision centered on the new street, Studebaker Place. The first development on site included the conditional site plan approval on October 19th of 2017. That was just a few weeks after subdivision registration. This whole subdivision has created new opportunities for investment in the city. We have the new 111,000 square foot storage facility at 7 Studebaker Place. We have 141,000 square feet that just was completed at 16 Studebaker Place. We have the first site plan approval, the 30,000 square foot office building at 3 Studebaker. What we're talking about today is 4 Studebaker, DA 17-155. We received conditional approval in May of 2021. That includes a one-story, 20,800 square foot office building. What's really important here is our timeline. I know we're getting tight on time, so I'm hoping just for a touch of leeway. But what's important here is the timing. So following demolition, that took 2 years. That's when the 5-year clock started the first time. We then went into 4 years of site remediation. We then had to go through a draft plan of subdivision process to establish 4 Studebaker Place and the lots in question. It was only at that point where you could get even close to achieving a building permit. So that came forward in the fall of 2017. Fast forward another year or two, we get 3 years of COVID. Despite that, the proponent was moving through advancing projects at 3 Studebaker. Now, we do acknowledge, and it's in your staff report, that there was a denial of the previous DC exemption request. That extension request came in from one of the purchasers of the lot, and I want to take a moment to distinguish that from what's here today. So at that point in time, there was no site plan approval for the development seeking the exemption, and the exemption was for the entirety of the remaining unused development charge credits. And at that point in time, we had achieved the conditional site plan approval for Studebaker, in our minds kind of securing the continuation of the credit. Ultimately, we're dealing with COVID. We had 5 comprehensive site plan submissions to get final site plan approval that we secured in the spring of this year, and we've now got that final approval in hand. What that really means is, over the course of time, with the initial demolition, council was prepared to forego $7.6 million in development charges. To date, only $356,000 have been utilized. Through this process, it's a 2-step process where you ask for your extension request at a staff level. It's 2 steps in the sense that first planning looks at it and then finance. We can see here that planning staff signed off on this particular extension request earlier this spring, but it didn't get through finance. The whole idea of this is to get quick investment and utilize the demolished sites. In this case, 4 Studebaker sitting there vacant, paying $13,000 a year in municipal taxes. Post-development, the estimate is $124,000 per year. Our request today is a one-time, 1-year extension to apply a DC credit to this site plan alone that translates to approximately $244,000 in DC credits. That leaves still more than $7 million in unused credits that council was originally prepared to forego. And that will allow this development to proceed. Why should we do it? Again, it's checking all of the right boxes: brownfield remediation, investing in the city's core. We've seen it happening. This particular development was ready to go, but given the current economic situation, it has been paused, and this relief is critical to allowing the project to proceed at this time. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? I have no one on the list. Is there? Councillor Beatty, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt, for the presentation. I was trying to make some notes in the very compressed fashion that the presentation took place. So this journey, I think you said, began in 2012. First site plan approval in 2017. Conditional approval for the current application, May of 2021. Demolition took 2 years, remediation took 4 years, COVID took 3 years. total of 7.6 million in DC credits applicable for the entire site, only 356,000 used to this point. The current ask is, well, it's outlined in the report. But I guess my question is, why did this all take so long? Like, it seems like you've highlighted 4 years of remediation and COVID, and we understand that. But what is the hang up on this site? Through the chair.
Through the chair, thanks for the good question. So again, the first 5-year window starts when the demolition is completed, and that was 2014. This was one of the most complicated brownfield removal cleanups. We're dealing with not just typical PCBs, we're dealing with mercury, we're dealing with a very contaminated site. That took 4 years of remediation to complete. Then we have to go through a plan of subdivision registration process that took until 2017. So that first 5-year portion of the program was essentially, we were unable to get a building permit to utilize the credit. So that first 5-year window, I think, is parked under that those issues and those parameters. Then we, the proponent advanced development at 3 Studebaker, that was running concurrently with the applications at 4 Studebaker. It took 5 comprehensive submissions to get through it. Part of that was overlapping with COVID, so it had the effect it had on all of us in terms of slowing things down. So again, with the conditional approval granted while the extension was still open, there was a second 5-year window granted. We had secured that conditional approval, so there's sort of an important milestone. And it was a long process, but it was very steady and continual. So there was no point where we were really taking our foot off the gas and parking things. It was just a lot to get through.
Two follow-up questions. Number one, in my ward, I don't have a lot of brownfield redevelopment. It's typically greenfield, so I'm not really familiar with a lot of the remediation that's necessary. Familiar with the site, used to drive past it all the time. Otis Elevator, had family members that worked there. You mentioned mercury in the soil, and I guess it's the way you said it. Is that not typical? I don't know what we typically expect to find when we do brownfield remediation. Did that add a component to it, or what's happening there?
Certainly. So, brownfield remediation is about, locating the contaminants, and certain contaminants have different characteristics. Much of them exist, they often use the word plumes, and those plumes are generally defined and relatively compact. When we get into what was found at this site, it was very fluid. So, it's a combination of contaminant removal and then followed by further testing. So it was the fact that these plumes are a whole lot less defined with the type of contamination on a site like this that made it that much more complicated and taking 4 years instead of what would have expected to be less.
Final question, Chair, through you. It sounds like the current request is for 240, whatever it was,
right,
out of the remaining 7 point whatever it was. And I guess I'm just looking for some indication as like, should council or this committee grant the current ask? I guess what's to stop the developer from continually coming back to the well and asking for another extension, another extension, another extension, another extension? Like, at what point do we say this file is closed and we're done with this?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question. And through the chair, I mean, this is distinguishable because it had conditional site plan approval before the expiry date. There is no other outstanding application that reached that milestone before the most recent expiry. So I think it's clearly distinguishable. And I think from the city's perspective, you can look at this remaining $7 million as sort of never going to happen and easily deniable. Certainly no more requests will be coming from this group. So I don't think anyone else has the standing to come to council and say they were ready to go before the expiry period and then diligently proceeded just with the normal city approval process. 5 submissions, takes a long time. So that's why we think that this should be sort of a special exception and doesn't really set a precedent to open the door to that remaining 7 million.
So I guess what I'm hearing, Chair, is like this is, are you saying on the stand that you don't intend to come back for any more? Like, is that what you're saying publicly into the record?
That's right. The proponent has no further land holdings within the subdivision, and no other parcel in the subdivision has an active application. Again, making it very distinguishable from today's request.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tattison?
Nice to see you guys. Thanks for bringing this forward today. When we talk about brownfield development, we have a program, the ERASE program. Did that qualify during this time? Sorry if that's in the report and I didn't notice it.
Through the chair, yes, the ERASE program was utilized through the redevelopment.
How many grants? Like how much was the total amount for that?
Through the chair, Councillor, I could endeavor to find that answer for you. I don't have that offhand.
No worries, no worries. Okay, final question. I'll research that as well. Is this new building going to be solar rooftop ready?
Solar rooftop ready? Is that the question?
Yeah. I saw one of your other buildings that you had lots of solar panels on the roof.
Through the chair, I would say that it would be solar panel ready. It's easy to apply. That's what's the beauty of solar panels on roofs, is how applicable they are to almost all scenarios.
Okay, I just know that there's different loads for when you have to put that up. So I was just wondering if it's solar rooftop ready. And I think that if it wasn't, I would be asking why not. So that's my point. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you and good morning. Just on that, one of the questions asked by my colleague, in a staff report of 2022, it said in 2020 you were in receipt of an ERASE grant for $1.57 million. Does that sound familiar?
Through the chair, no reason to question that value, and yes, we were going through the program.
Okay. I'm just reading from the report. An audit of invoices confirmed that the total maximum ERASE grant to be $1.571 million. Thank you. Could you just, I'm sorry, I likely missed it, just confirm the type of developments going in? I thought I read previously it's a mix of storage facility, warehouse, and industrial office, but I'm not sure. Through the chair.
Sure. Yeah, so this, just given the market, there's not a lot of industrial tenants willing to sort of speculate themselves and contribute to the construction of a new building. So this will be a building built on spec at the developer's cost to be tenant ready. And so it's being built as an industrial building that has flexible uses. So it could have one large tenant. It could be, once built, divided into 5 separate units for multiple tenants. It's sort of the developer taking a risk here and saying that in order to attract commercial industrial tenancy to this area, you kind of need to have a building ready to go. So it's being built flexibly, and we can't say right now what exactly will be the final use.
Sorry, I'm a little appreciate the market conditions. I'm just a little confused on it. It says, if I'm reading from the staff report, in the correspondence from DCR, they stated that they were able to market the subdivision lots to individual purchasers as of October of 2017. This has given the developer approximately 5 years to market and sell the subdivision lots. Only 3 lots were sold of the 18. DCR has stated that they sold the remaining 15 lots in January of 2022. the developer has only submitted one site plan application for 2 self-storage buildings at the site. So I'm just appreciating the market conditions always shift. I'm just trying to seek some clarity on what is going to be there.
Yes.
And it seems previously you stated self-storage units.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's an important clarification. And also on your erase grant number, because you're referencing the 2022 report, which is from DCR as the applicant, which is different. This is a different entity that holds this for Studebaker site.
Okay.
So I think that is all correct, but that's in reference to the entire giant brownfield site that was remediated. So as you can see, I think from Matt's presentation, there is a storage facility there. So there has been development around on different parcels of the site, and the erase grant applied not just to this one site. And so some of those uses have come to fruition, and that's another reason why this has taken so long, because even this developer has completed another building, and when you're remediating and demolishing this size of site, you know, the timelines are tight to say you have to do it all at once. You know, it was a phased approach from multiple developers, and I think that's another reason that contributed to so long, because you're sort of working through phases in development and different uses.
Thank you. I'll have some questions for staff. I appreciate your delegation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Apologies. I don't have it in the staff report attached. Are you able to share the date from your timeline slide of the conditional site plan approval?
Do you want us to pull it up?
Or if they could share it as well, the delegates could share it.
Just 1 second. So you're looking for the timeline slide?
Or just specifically the conditional site approval, because there's a staff report attached that has all the other elements of the timeline, but the conditional site plan approval is just the one element that's not on both timelines.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to get that.
Just 1 sec, Councillor, they're pulling it up.
Through the chair, so there's a couple key dates. So no site plan applications could really receive approval until the draft plan of subdivision was registered. That took place October 5th, 2017. Then the subject site plan application received its first conditional approval on October 19th of the same year. That included a number of parcels through a phased site plan approval. That led to the development at 3 Studebaker under the same site plan application, and it led to the final site plan approval at 4 Studebaker. So the broader conditional approval was achieved in October of 2017. 4 Studebaker's conditional site plan approval came in May of 2021, followed by those 5 comprehensive submissions to get final site plan approval March 11th of 2025.
Councillor?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, have the delegates had a chance to review I think it's just 2-3-page staff report associated with this delegation? I just don't want to ask questions about something if it's no familiarity.
Yes, we've reviewed the staff report. Thank you.
Okay. Both the staff report's timeline and your timeline seem to show an understanding that the demolition credits expired in July and September of 2022. And now there's an ask to extend the credits. If the credits have expired, what's being extended? Are you able, because that's discussed in the staff report, you're seeming to acknowledge the credits have expired. Are you just able to help me understand your ask in the context of the credits being expired?
Through the chair, we approached staff in early 2025 about how these credits may be made available to us. Through that consultation, we were advised we're in a position to apply for a further extension despite knowing that it had lapsed. Again, that lapse date coming after the conditional approval. So that formal submission was made in February of 2025 to ask for this DC extension. At a staff level, that was turned down, that ultimately led to today's delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, last final question from me through you, Chair. I'm just trying to understand, because wasn't that conditional site plan approval in place when the 2022 extension had come into place? And so I'm hearing now that the conditional plan approval, is maybe not the perfect criteria, but it's kind of partially meeting the 5-year criteria. And so looking for some flexibility. I'm just trying to understand, wasn't that approval in place the last time the request for an extension came forward? And so is there a difference between this request and the previous 2022 request for an extension?
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, again, the extension request was by DCR Holdings last time for the 2022 extension, and this is a separate entity, and its site plan approval was in place. So this developer wasn't a part of that specific application, again, because it had an understanding at that time that it had sort of locked in its place in the queue for final approval and pulling the permit. So yes, there was the 2022 request for extension, which was denied, again, for the full site, the full $7.6 million. And again, this is just that site plan approval conditional was in place, and just for that smaller amount. And that's the only thing that's being addressed here today.
Thank you. Maybe can I just restate just so I understand through you, Chair? So are you saying the conditional site plan approval that came in place in 2017 was for the subsection of the broader site that is specifically in front of us today, and was not a conditional approval for the total site that was in front of can that just be explicitly clear that the conditional approval is for a different area that's being discussed, or is have any of the facts changed, I think, beyond who owns the site? Have any of the planning facts changed beyond the ownership?
Through the chair, to help clarify, DA 17 155 included 4 Studebaker and 3 Studebaker. It did not include the lands that were in front of committee in 2022 when the last extension request was filed by DCR. So DCR came forward. There was no approvals in place for the storage facility, but that was what was driving the ask, is the storage facility that is now in place at 7 Studebaker. So it was, again, they didn't have an application in place. They had a request for the entirety of the credit extension. This one distinctly different in that it had approvals in place, and we're merely asking for the 244,000, not the 7 million. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I have a much better understanding. Thank you for that clarity. I think if I'm correct, the applicant or the delegates are presenting the argument that we acknowledge that maybe didn't meet the criteria for an extension 5 years ago for the total combined application, but as a portion of the site, it's our belief that we met the criteria as a portion. And so we'd like to go back in time and say, hey, didn't we actually meet it as a portion? And we met those criteria within the 5-year window for this portion of the broader site. So I understand the ask being put forward much clearer. Thank you for those answers.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to go around one more time. Anyone else? Questions of the delegation? Seeing none. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
So, 6.1A is the FCS 76 Development Charge Demolition Credit Extension Delegation for Studebaker Place. There was a memo from staff. So do we have people that would like to ask questions of staff on this memo? Councillor Wang, go ahead, and everyone else please indicate and we'll get you on the list. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, because again, this item is not a report on the actual agenda, and because the memo is attached to this delegation, so just procedurally, are we allowed to ask or give direction to staff at this time?
Elsie.
Yes, you can absolutely ask questions of staff, and if you determine that you want to give them direction in form of a motion, you can do that.
Okay. So my first question through you, Chair, is as I see in the memo, there is no sort of staff delegation authority. So what is allowed at this time in terms of next actions? The ask is very clear. The delegate is looking for an extension for 1 year on these exemptions. So what's our next steps? Like what can we possibly do?
Jim Zagarek.
Through the chair, Mike Zagarek, General Manager, Finance Corporate Services. If directed by committee to review the delegation's request and bring back options, staff can do so. Those options may include, and this may not be a comprehensive list of options, may include staff reporting back with respect to the authority to resurrect tax credits. So to be clear, there's no opportunity to extend the tax credits. The tax credits expired September 2022. So we would need to engage with legal in terms of the authority to resurrect a portion of those tax credits. If that is not an option or represents some risk to the corporation, an alternative would be to provide a grant. The grant would not necessarily be specific to this development. We would have to engage with economic development to look at a grant with respect to a sector or a circumstance such as a brownfield, because we cannot bonus a specific or independent developer. We can't provide a financial advantage to one developer relative to other developers within that sector or within those circumstances. So those would be, I see those as two potential options. Final comment maybe I'll make is the city does not put aside allowances for tax credits, so there isn't $7 million sitting aside to be allocated. In either of those two situations, they would likely require draws from reserves. So staff would have to report back to council and that these are discretionary discretionary credits or grants, and so that would require funding to offset those grants.
Okay.
Councillor?
So through the chair, those are just two options that come to mind at this time.
Okay. So I'm mindful that the delegate is really only asking for 224,000 or some 244 K rather than the 7 million. So at which time, and I'm also mindful that these credits have expired as of 2022. Has there ever been have we ever done this before? Like, have we ever retroactively gone back to extend a DC from essentially 3 years ago? And then now now the delegate is asking for an additional year. So really we're looking at an extension from 2022 to now 2026/7 almost.
So through the chair, the city has extended development charge credits at the time when those credits are set to expire, as in the case of this particular property. I don't know of a situation where the city has resurrected a development charge credit. So that is the issue we would have to consult with legal in terms of whether or not the city has the authority to resurrect a tax credit that expired effectively 3 years ago.
Okay. Comment from me then, Chair?
Sure. Go ahead.
The Studebaker Place is a really large development in the Ward 3 areas, and I am very cognizant that we don't have a lot of employment lands anymore. So I think at this time, I am interested in understanding, getting a report back to see what are our options, because based on this, there is a lot of challenge here, but we've also never navigated in this sort of realm. So as much as I am interested in that development and making sure that we are actually doing the work to get these employment lands online, I am also interested in covering our butts. So making sure that we are doing things correctly. So I am genuinely interested in the report back at some time during this conversation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Appreciating my colleagues' questions and the answer clarifying that we don't have a precedent for this. With respect to the other issue, we've only extended for a maximum of 10 years, as I understand it, on 2 occasions. Is that the case through the chair?
Through the chair, yes. And when we went out recently to the residential and non-residential community, the development community, with respect to our recent DC bylaw, we did propose whether or not extending the DC credit period from 5 years to 10 years would be an opportunity and a priority. We did not hear back from either of those 2 sectors, so it did not form part of our recommendations back to committee and council recently with respect to our DC bylaw.
Councillor?
Thank you. But on that point, on our 20%, we did include residential and non-residential. I think that's pretty unique for Hamilton in that regard.
Through the chair, yes. And we would report, if directed to report back, we would work with our colleagues in planning and development to see whether or not the 20% applies with respect to this development. So whether or not they would benefit from the temporary 20% discount.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. And appreciating that if you were requested to do so, you would include legal at the table, because as noted, we would be in violation of the Municipal Act. We could be if we were to do something that favored one over others. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes. We just have to be careful not to do a one-off. If staff came forward with an option, it may be an option within a specific sector or an option with respect to, for instance, brownfields or other situations in terms of redevelopment.
Thank you. So just if I could further understand the answer that was provided to Councillor Wang in going away and trying to come up with a formula. We don't presently have a policy to guide staff on the issuance of a grant in this regard. So I'm trying to understand what would seem an inherent tension between favoring one, not having any parameters to inform that, and then how would you inform those? Like, how would you, what would you do to try and form that grant process in such a way that A, you don't open the floodgates, or B, you don't put us in legal danger, and C, like, could you just help me a little bit on what you would be having to do there through the chair?
Through the chair, just to be clear, why I suggested a grant is just theoretically a grant is an option. Finance would have to engage with legal and economic development in developing a rationale. If staff were to recommend a grant program, there would have to be a rationale for the grant program, and hence the reference to economic development and legal being part of the team to consider what is being requested and whether there is such a rationale.
Thank you.
Councillor Crutch, please.
Thanks. My comments will be brief. I just wanted to state that I know we've said that, well, they're only asking for $241,000 out of a potential large amount, close to $8 million. So, of course, relative to the ask, it does seem like a small amount. I just really want to say that that's always a shocking phrase to me. I was here in 2022 and 2023 where I brought forward several motions that were worth a heck of a lot less than this, and there was so much contention here, I can't even recall it. I can't even recount the tension there was about these amounts. In fact, during the last budget process, for an amount far less than this, there was contention. It does seem in these spaces, when we're being asked for money, in this specific space around DCs, we have a different sense of what seems like a lot of money. So I just want to say, like, it's all the same money. It's all coming from the same place. So I'm not on for just giving out a grant to one individual group, especially in this kind of context where the DCs have expired. That's not on, and staff has said we can't do that. Also, I think the Ward 3 councillor should be involved in the discussion in some way. She's not a member of this committee, but this is going to go to, now to council. And so if the Ward 3 councillor wants to get involved, I think it's worthwhile having a conversation about that at a larger level outside of this example. Maybe there's other kinds of granting programs from brownfields. Most commonly, Wards 2, 3, and 4 experience those kinds of things. Also some in Ward 1, but primarily the lower city in those 4 wards is where you're going to see brownfield development happening. We have an erase program and erase program grants. We have other financial incentive grants, right? I also think that considering the scope, scale, and size of this program, that I don't think personally, although I trust what was said today, that this is a barrier to carrying the program forward. We keep using the phrase, it's not a lot of money compared to the whole overall program. So I don't think it's essential for us to be doing this. I think it sets a bad precedent, and I won't support it, but I'm happy if other people want to bring forward something to council to talk about a new grant program. Thanks.
Councillor Clark.
Can you hear me, Chair?
I can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just clarifying, there is a chart in the information report that staff provided. It appears that council has already denied the extension of demolition credits. Is that correct, or am I misreading?
Through the chair, that's correct. Council denied the extension in June of 2022.
So procedurally, the only thing that this body could do is ask for a report back, because any decision on any extension to the demolition credit would have to come through a reconsideration motion at council. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, no, in that there are no existing development charge credits on this property. They expired in June of 22 with council's decision not to extend the development charge credits. So those credits have been expired for 3 years. Hence, if directed, we would report back on whether or not the city has the authority to resurrect development charge credits versus extend development charge credits.
So procedurally, how does AF&A address a matter that has already been decided by council?
Through the chair, we would have to take that back with and consult with the clerk. I appreciate it was a former term of council, and therefore the reconsideration would not apply. However, I believe the issue is the resurrection of development charge credits versus the extension of development charge credits. So while both dealing with the same matter or subject, development charge credits, I see them as slightly different. One is really something that we don't have precedent on, which is to resurrect development charge credits, and we would have to come back with the legality or the legal authority to do so, and then we would consult with clerks to ensure that procedurally, if that's brought forward for committee, it's appropriate for committee to consider.
Councillor?
So, Chair, just a couple of quick comments. I feel uncomfortable about the hint to resurrect demolition credits that have already expired. And so if there is a request for a report back from staff, I would support that. But once a demolition credit has expired, I feel that we really can't touch that without causing a lot of disruption in the sector, because others will say, well, why didn't you resurrect my demolition credit? So a staff report back would be the most that I would support, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Taddison.
Just seeking some clarification. I thought I heard the delegate say that they asked staff what they could do about getting this extension, and it was recommended that they go through this process. Did someone on staff, do we know if someone on staff actually did that?
Through the chair, that is correct. That was the reference, I think, in the context of as we were going through the engagement with respect to the residential, non-residential communities regarding how we can support the development community during this marketplace. So as we were considering options such as the 10-year DC credit, but again, it was a placeholder, go through the process pending council's decision with respect to the development charge credit term. Staff did not recommend extending the development charge credit term from 5 years, 10 years for two principal reasons. One is the 5-year really creates an opportunity for redevelopment, but it also holds the developer account to actually develop on the site versus having a vacant property for an extended period of time. Second reason is we did not hear from both the residential and non-residential sectors that that was a priority for those two sectors. Understanding each site is unique, but we did not hear from both of those sectors that that was a priority.
Councillor.
When you say you did not hear, were there, I'm trying to understand, was there a timeline which was requested from the community to give information?
Through the chair, yes. The extension from 5 to 10 was one of the options we put out to the development community to respond back, and they did not respond back that that was a priority.
So if it's my information from the delegates that they submitted a letter on June 11th, is it that you're not aware of that letter?
Sorry, through the chair, the June 11th letter in terms of asking whether or not this is a potential opportunity?
For an extension?
Yes. As I understand, staff responded and suggested that they submit information, again, as a placeholder in the context as we were going out to engagement. It might have applied, subject to what staff recommended, what we heard from the industry, and what staff recommended as it relates to amending the DC bylaw.
Okay, thanks. So I guess much like Councillor Clark, I will support a report back. Thanks.
Any other speakers? Councillor Pauls.
I just want to ask a couple of questions. The whole development was over 7 million, but this delegate today is talking about just one part of the development. So that one part of the development, they need a credit of 244,000. I'm just wondering if I heard the delegates say that they didn't have the timeline because of some of condition approval. Approval of conditioning comes from the city. If they don't get those approval, how can they move on? And also I heard site readiness. It wasn't ready because it was brownfield. So,
Councillor Pauls, we're just going to bring a staff to, GM Zager is definitely not going to take the planning question. So we'll wait for an individual to come down and introduce himself and answer your question.
Good morning through the chair, Sean Kenny, manager of site planning in the planning department. So the planning department issues conditional site plan approval based on a circulation of a site plan. So it is in essence, Campbellton has a 2-stage site plan approval process. We issue conditional approval, so approval in principle subject to clearing of conditions. So in this case, the applicant received a conditional site plan approval for a multi-phase development over several properties that were in their plan of subdivision.
Did they get approval for that specific site? Because to me, maybe I'm new here, I don't know. If you see the whole, development, they got site approval, but maybe not at that site. Did they get the approval for that site? Because I heard the delegate said it was brownfield. They had to do more to it than just.
So yes, they received a conditional phase site plan approval for, in essence, what is currently known as number 3 and number 4 Studebaker Place. They built on 3 Studebaker Place, and then Earlier this year, we provided them the conditional approval for the building, which they have made this request.
When was that approval? Just.
Sorry, I don't have the dates. It was in the.
I'm just.
Yeah, sorry, it was in if we can bring the presentation up. So we gave conditional approval for the development they have made the request for. Again, the 2017, but what's appropriate is the 2017 site plan application did envision what they are proposing.
Okay, so 2017, they had a 10-year, right? So shouldn't that be 1027, or is it 5 years? I'm a little confused here. What's the extension for 5 years? The $7 million from last time, was it for 10 years?
Through the chair, the property was demolished in 2012, so the 5 years started in 2012. It was set to expire in 2017. The property owner at the time sought an extension for 5 years. That was granted. And in 2022, they sought a further extension, and that was denied by council.
Okay, and the only way we could provide this credit is by a motion, maybe by the councillor. If the council were to put a motion, say, we could do that?
So through the chair, there is no credit to provide in that those credits expired in 2022.
Okay.
And so we would have to report back, again, with respect to whether we have authority to resurrect a credit or alternatively to provide a grant. Okay. And that grant would be in the context of a broader discussion, not specific to this particular development. Again, we would have to consult with legal economic development in terms of whether there's a rationale to extend our granting program.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Okay. Vice Chair's out of the room. Councillor Wang, if you can take chair. I just got a question and a comment.
Please go ahead.
Jim Zagariga, just for me, clear, just because I don't know, the credits on it, when we talk about DC credits, this site had $7 million in change in DC credits. From a financial standpoint, how do we budget that? Are you budgeting that as an expense? I don't know how we would put that in our budget, so just some clarification, please.
Yeah. So through the chair, great question. So we don't budget for development. What is a development charge credit? Development charge credit is a development would have paid development charges, a developer would have paid development charges at the time of the original development of the property. If that property transacts and there's a change in purpose that includes a demolition, the property owner or developer is given a credit for the number of square feet of the original building and the value of development charges at that time. So in 2012, the value of the development charge credits would have represented the amount of square feet and the value of development charges in 2012. In 27, so those credits carried on with the development, set to expire in 2017, and any of those credits, square footage that wasn't replaced, were set to expire. The developer sought to have that credit extended. It was extended one time. And so again, it's not that we budget for development charge credits, it's really an entitlement to the developer with respect to what was originally there in terms of square footage and the rate of development charges at that time. Sorry for the length of it, but I'll point out that developers benefit from the time period of redevelopment in that development charges in 2012 would have been much lower than development charges, for instance, today. And so in part, why we limit it to 5 years is if a developer takes 10 years, 20 years to redevelop, we continue to provide them credits based on square footage. We don't provide them what the value of those development charge credits were at the original time of the demolition. So there's a benefit to developers that could accrue if that land stays vacant and is developed over an extended period of time, because development charges increase. And so if development charges increase by double, they're getting twice the value of development charges in 10 years because it's based on square footage. So I just wanted to identify that benefit that accrues as well.
Okay, and just a comment from me. The reason this one is a little, I guess, more interesting than others is, as we know, we started at the beginning of this term talking about trying to increase our industrial and commercial. I'm not saying this is the way we should do it. Maybe it is, but these is opportunities where we need people to make these developments happen because they benefit us from the tax perspective. I think we projecting 130,000 as opposed to the 13 we're collecting now. So I would be supportive of at least seeing what the options are, just so in the future, whether it's for this one or any other ones, maybe that 10-year with the market would have been beneficial, but obviously we made that decision. But it's hard to stunt the growth in industrial and commercial development, especially when our residential development is dead as well. So if there is a councillor that's going to move a report back, I would definitely be in favor of that. That's it for me. Good. I'll take the chair back. Councillor Cooper.
Through you, Chair. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot this morning, but just a rough order of magnitude of what currently would we have for DC charges, DC credits on the books right now? Do we have a sense of what that looks like?
Just one sec, Councillor, just conferring with staff. James Garrick.
Through the chair, we have them for specific properties, but we don't have an aggregate.
Okay. Through you, Chair, do we have a general sense then of, and just a rough percentage, of how much of our DC credits expire versus are actually used? Is it 60, 40, 80, 20? Do we have any of that?
Through the chair, we don't have what the ratio is. I would say the majority are utilized. The majority of developers will only proceed with demolition, recognizing those development charge credits expire in 5 years. So it's really the demolition that triggers the time period for the development charge credit. So majority of developers align that to fully utilize the development charge credits. And just a further point is, there is as well a benefit to a developer. If a developer demolishes the building and that site sits idle for 5 years or 10 years, they're paying a lower tax rate on a clear parcel versus a parcel with a vacant building. So some developers may demolish to reduce their tax burden. So just identifying that as a factor as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other first-time speakers? I don't think we have any. I think everybody's stopped. Okay. Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions from committee to GM Zagaric. I do have a direction to staff. Elsie Bates, could you put that up on the screen for us, if possible? So I'd like to say, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Beattie, that staff be directed to investigate options for providing relief respecting DCs for situations where demolition/tax credits have expired, including but not limited to the possibility of resurrecting those credits or developing a grant program and reporting back to AFA at a future committee meeting.
I was just going to, GM Zagaric or Director, do we have a timeline we can put on this?
Through the chair, if I can first ask the reference to tax credits.
Oh, DC
Demolition credits,
sorry.
right?
Okay.
Demolition credits, sorry, yes, demolition credits.
And through the chair, with respect to timing, we'll have to engage with our colleagues in economic development and legal and clerks in terms of a timing. I appreciate that the delegate may have a more urgent time period. And keeping that in mind, we can consider options such as grandfathering or time periods for the grant program. But again, I don't want to suggest that's a possibility. It's just something that we can consider and report back on.
So does the language of investigating options, is that general enough to include all of those concerns that you have?
Through the chair, yes. And again, I see the opportunity in engaging with our colleagues in economic development in that this may be less of a DC credit conversation and more of a grant program, economic development grant program.
I still think that doing the work of coming through with that resurrection of the DCs is interesting, but just as Councillor Clark has very clearly said, it does set precedent. So I would just like to see that information rather than actually moving down that path, but I would like to see that information if possible. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson on the direction.
Thank you very much on that last point. I don't mean to be picky, but the motion presupposes almost an outcome, and I would feel more comfortable in terms of some of the risks that have been identified if we could just put in a word that says that staff be directed to investigate like the feasibility of it.
Do you want to change providing to possible? Because I guess providing, you're saying states that we're going to provide something?
That staff be directed to investigate the feasibility of.
Providing relief.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't want to presuppose trying to fit a 7 foot into a, what's the analogy? I don't want to presuppose trying to fit a size 11 into a size 7 if it's just not feasible.
Councillor Wang, friendly? Friendly. That's it, Councillor Wilson? Good, thank you. Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Chair, and happy to second this and support it. And I actually appreciate the language change there, because I think what I'm interested in is from the perspective of I'm always concerned, you've heard me around this chamber before, with the amount of employment land available. Just lost a big chunk of greenfield development land out in Stony Creek, 1400 South Service Road now through an OLT appeal converted to another use, which puts more pressure on brownfield development sites. DC credits necessarily wouldn't apply in greenfield sites because there's nothing to demolish. So this inherently, I think, pertains particularly to brownfield remediation sites. And I think anybody that's driven through some of our older industrial areas and we see unutilized space, I know I've driven past this particular site for the last 10 years and wondered, what's taking so long? Why is the development not coming? So if this could be looked at, and I think that staff have the understanding that we're looking at ways that we may be able to, if not through some kind of DC mechanism, through another mechanism, try to offer further incentive for brownfield redevelopment. That's really my goal on this, and I think that it's captured well. Happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark up next. Can we just get minimize the or stop sharing? Yep. Thank you. Unless Councillor Clark wants to see it again. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm fine without seeing the motion. I just want to ask a question of GM Zagaric, now that he's read this motion a few times. What's your understanding of it as to what you were reporting back?
Jim Zagaric.
Through the chair, maybe two parts. One is whether or not there is a rationale for the city to revise an existing grant program as it relates to this sector, and I won't say this particular development, but this sector, including brownfield, or to create a new granting program with respect to these types of developments. And the second part would be exclusive of a grant. Is there an authority for the city to resurrect development charges? And we would do so, or staff may recommend to do so, only again if there's a rationale for resurrecting the development charges. So whether or not there are greater pros and cons of doing so.
Thank you. And Chair, when you're drafting the report, is it fair for me to assume that you will include planning and legal so that we get a fulsome report back?
Jim Zegaric.
Through the chair, I'm inviting the whole familia to the table on this report.
Councillor Clark, I know you know what familia means, but family.
Grazie. Thank you very much.
Two non-Italians speaking Italian. Interesting. I don't know any other language, but anybody else? Nope. Yes. Can we have the motion, please, put back up? One last look. The only question, GM Zegaric, I have is the future meeting. That's what we're going with. We usually don't leave future meetings. We usually have a date.
Yeah.
So
through the chair, I would propose Q1, given some of the other priority staff are working to and the engagement that would be necessary. I would propose Q1 of 2026.
Councillor?
My understanding of the entire conversation today was, especially also hearing from staff, was with respect to a sectoral, looking at brownfield lands, which is not at all represented here. That's the only reason I'd support this. If we're talking about specifically trying to do this, but I'm not interested in going onto a whole thing where we start saying we're going to start resurrecting, which the word has been used, by the way, is resurrecting, which I think is interesting, credits that have expired already. We have a process for how this works, and I think it makes sense. And continuing to provide a sort of the unending, seemingly series of grant programs for every one-off situation doesn't really go, as far as I'm concerned, with how we tried to approach this during this term of council, holistically. We had consultants spend a ton of money looking at this issue. We consulted with the development industry, who I'm hearing didn't ask for this to be a priority. So why? I don't understand why we're doing this. It seems like we're just, every time someone's coming forward saying, I have a situation in my specific property, we're developing a program now to address that. I think this is the wrong signal to be sending. I think this is asking staff to do work we don't need to be doing. And if credits have expired in the approved way that council has expressed for them to be expired, then they have expired. So even if it's for brownfield development specifically, I think it has to be about something else. If we want to develop a grant program for brownfield development outside of the erase program, let's let councillors where that's impacted bring forward that ask to staff. I don't think it has anything to do with this. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the vote. It's electronic. It's moved by Councillor Wang. It's seconded by Councillor Beatty. When the vote is up, please indicate. Oh, hold that thought. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. My apologies. I would like to see it again because I am trying to be mindful of some of the comments and reservations expressed by councillors. And I think what I've heard is we shouldn't be site-specific in our direction. We should be program or condition-specific, meaning brownfields. So if I could get the language back up again, please, and thank you. The reason I'm asking is I'm always mindful of setting staff up for not wishing to set up staff for failure. So staff be directed to investigate providing for situations. I guess I would ask, maybe unfairly so, through the chair, if there would be any insight or comment that could be offered from staff to kind of address maybe the situation that Councillor Kretsch has raised, if I've understood it correctly, which is rather, could there be more of a reference to what we're talking about here? And this is, do we need a new grant program for brownfields? Like, is there a possibility?
I think that'd be an ask of the mover. At the end of the day, we created a motion here. If we want to change it, let's go to the mover of the motion first before we ask staff to change the motion. You're looking to add brownfield development specifically into the motion? I just don't want to change the mover's motion between you and staff without the mover of the motion having any insight or input into it.
Yeah, I respect that, and I respect that it's owned by the mover and the seconder, but I was just seeking counsel from what exactly are staff being tasked with, and if is it a site-specific review, or is it actually a brownfield program review? I'm just seeking some clarity, and I'm happy to defer to the mover, of course.
I know Councillor Clark asked GM Zagaric that question about what he believes the intentions are here. So is this site-specific or a broad report back is what I believe you're looking for? Yep.
Through the chair, I'm interpreting it as a broad report back. If it was site-specific and not wanting to get into planning expertise, I'm assuming the conversation would be a SEPA instead of a grant program. And so while the direction is for developing a grant program, I'm envisioning the possibility of revising existing grant programs. It may not be a new grant program. It could be the revision of an existing grant program to expand. But again, I'm interpreting broad. Otherwise, we would be talking SEPA, a community improvement program area instead of a citywide grant program.
Councillor, good. Councillor Clark?
Well, I suspect a few of you won't be happy with me, but in reading this motion several times, it strikes me that we are asking staff to look at resurrecting credits that have expired and the council has determined expired in 2022. While it appears to be a motion that is more general in nature, we all know that it is the catalyst is this one particular development. This one particular development's DC credit expired in September, and now we're going to wait until Q1, which is 5 months away, possibly. It would seem to me that it would be more prudent to advise the developer that the demolition credit has expired. And at the moment, we don't have a program. And take this, it doesn't matter how we word this, there will be people rightfully in the public that are looking at this as it is coming from one developer whose credits have expired. So I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable sending staff away to look at the feasibility of providing relief respecting DC for situations where DC credits have expired. There is no, they expired. If there's a different program altogether, separate from DC credits, that's something altogether different. But this is talking about DC's expiring and how we can resurrect or find another program. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable the way it is worded, and it's being attached to a specific request from a specific developer who, unfortunately, his DC credits expired September of 2022. and now they're trying to get an extension. It's not possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Anybody? Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm still interested in hearing the report back, and I'll tell you why, as worded. Respecting the comments around, we understand that we've been told by staff that the credits have expired. The only way to bring them back is to resurrect them, which is probably not possible, but I guess I'm looking for something definitive, a firewall, if you will, that would safeguard against all future requests coming forward. We have a definitive paper that says this cannot be done, and here are the mechanisms as to why this cannot be done. And then as an alternative, here are some options that we actually can do moving forward. I think that that's valuable. I understand where everybody's coming from. I don't actually think it's a waste of staff resources to have that firewall, in my opinion. I think it would be helpful to determining the outcome of future applications that may come forward.
Okay, I got Councillor Cooper, and then hopefully we can go to a vote, everyone. And if, I understand if you don't agree with it, let's just vote against it. Councillor Cooper, please, as quick as possible.
Yeah, just,
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair, through you. We got a policy. It's pretty clear what it is. I think it's to motivate people to get these properties up and going. We're quite gracious in the sense that we extend this to a point where whatever the DC charges are at a point in time is reflective of the current value instead of holding it what it was. If we start walking away from this, we walk away from the motivation to really develop these properties, and they're just sitting around. So I'm reluctant to support this, and so I'll be voting no.
Thank you. No one else on the list. Councillor Pauls?
I agree with Councillor Beatty. At a time development right now, we're at a standstill. People are really not building because of the economics, So we have to look at that as well. So I think getting information, it's so important at this time because we wouldn't want developers just to say, okay, I'm out of here. So I think it's important for us to look at it, especially we're going through a hard time. The next few years is not going to be easy. So I think it's important for us to just get a report back and see what we could do, but say, no, it's already expired, but what are the alternative because of economics, because of, brownfield, because of, situation. So I think it's prudent for us to look at that. So I will support this.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. Can we bring up the vote, please?
Before we go to the vote, Mr. Chair, can we just confirm the language? I've got the highlighted piece about the brownfield developments, whether the mover wants to include that or not.
I appreciate that addition, but we heard from GM Zagaric that he already understood the assignment, so I think it's okay to remove it from this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to the vote, please, clerk. It's on its way, everyone. We put the computer to sleep. We're just trying to wake it up. Vote is up. Please indicate. And that carries 6-4. Moving on to 6.2. Eden Jonas, Cedar Oak Children's Foundation, respecting request that the city support our organization through an alternative development fund in person. Eden, please come forward. Good morning, Eden. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Audit, Finance and Administration Committee, elected officials, staff members present. My name is Eden Jonas, and I'm here today to represent my organization, Cedar Oak Children's Foundation. Cedar Oak is a new childcare center in Ward 7, located at 940 Queensdale Avenue East. We're a nonprofit organization led by myself. I'm a Hamilton resident. I live in Waterdown with my family, and happy not just to be a resident, but also a local business operator. We are fortunate to be enrolled in the Canada Wild Cedar Early Learning Childcare Program, CWELC. We're very grateful for the support that we receive from the region, and it goes without saying the presence of Madam Chase and other members of staff today shows that. For those who are familiar with the area, we're located in a 2,400 square foot property. It's a small house at the corner of Queensdale and Upper Gauge. A small building, but long history. I understand it used to be a fireplace, but now transitioned into a commercial office space, and now we're going to make it into a really cute childcare center. We're a small company, we're new, but we bring some value to the Hamilton region. First of all, by establishing this childcare center, we would increase the childcare access rate in Ward 7 from 24% to 27%. And I must say that the childcare access rate in Ward 7 is currently below the CWELC access rate or target access rate of 37%, and also below the city average of 31%. We will be serving 49 children in our center. These are 49 children that their names can now be struck off from the long wait list, and their parents can go back to work or increase their work hours. We will also be creating 10 local jobs. It goes without saying, as long as the candidates are qualified, we would prioritize hiring locally. Now, this is one, not only to improve work-life balance for our staff, but also a way to give back to the community. So today, I'm delegating on the development charges for conversion of that office space into a childcare center. We have been assessed to pay $37,000. This cost is very much, and it poses a lot of financial constraint to our project. It increases our costs by 5%. And also, I must say that being a nonprofit organization, we don't have access to banking funds. We're not able to lend any money or borrow any money from the banks, and we don't have access to commercial lending. This poses constraints to our project. And so right now, the delay of this payment is delaying our building permit. We are already 1 month behind construction. And this, as you know, the winter is upon us. So if we don't start as soon as possible, this delay could easily turn into a 3 to 4 month delay while we wait for the snow to clear. And so the relief that I'm asking from the committee today is to please, in any way, either waive this development charge, reduce the charge significantly to enable us complete our project, or provide us access to any other alternative development funds that can help us complete our project in time and in the quality that is required by the CWELC and the Ministry of Education. I respectfully thank everyone for the opportunity to present today, and hope that we can, in our good judgment and understanding, consider our request today. I just want to confirm that our organization is committed to bringing value to the Hamilton region, and not only through this project, but also future endeavors. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Eden, I think I said Edna last time. I apologize. My eyes aren't very good. It's Eden, right?
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Councillor Pauls, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. Eden, I met you maybe a month ago now, or 3 weeks ago. It was a pleasure to meet you. When you had your daycare and you showed me all the pictures and your love for children and love to help especially in Ward 7, which we do need more daycare. I really appreciate it. My question to you is, you want to open when?
Through the chair, our target open date is January 2026.
That's only a few months away.
Yes.
So also, I think you told me the cost, you do not own the building, do you?
No, we don't own the building.
So you're renting?
Yes, through the chair, we lease the property for 10 years.
For 10 years. I think you showed me when you came to my office the amount of money you're spending. Can you let us know how much money you're spending on this building?
Thank you. Through the chair, the total cost of our project is $723,000. We are currently partially funded by the CWALK program for $441,000, and the rest of those funds we are sourcing privately. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have access to any form of banking lending. So this cost, this development charge does pose a constraint on us.
So that's what you said when you came in, that really almost $400,000 that you need to come up. You can get bank loans, or you just need help with this. When you came in, I phoned staff right away and I asked if this has ever been done before, and they said yes, it has. And I'm going to be asking the staff a few other questions about a nonprofit daycare, how we could help, and I hope we can help. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Beatty.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Hi, Eden. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the presentation. And I forgive me if it came up in the beginning and I probably missed it, but I just want you, if you could restate your position, the structure of your organization, for-profit or registered nonprofit. Which of the two are you?
Thank you, through the chair. We're a non-profit organization, registered non-profit organization.
Okay, that was the bulk of my question. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eden. Any other questions? Councilor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you and good morning. I could ask staff this, but since you presented it, could you help me understand, there was a number referenced in your presentation, and it had to do, in reference, I think, to wait lists, and I think it was 31 or 37%. Could you explain that, what that number means, through the chair?
Yeah. Through the chair, thank you for the question. To the best of my understanding, the CWALK program has a target access rate for childcare programs. 37% is the target.
37?
37%. And as I mentioned earlier, currently Ward 7 is at 24% before the establishment of our center. So if we build this center by adding 49 spaces, we would increase that rate from 24 to 27. So different wards are at different access rates at the moment, but Ward 7 specifically, where we're located, is at 24%.
Okay, thank you for putting that in context for me.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Just looking around the room one last time. Seeing no further speakers, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We are moving on to 6.2A, which is FCS 25070, Child Care Center Development Charge Delegation. Any questions for staff on the memo? Councillor Pauls, please go ahead.
Thank you. I read through it all, and I'm a little bit, I want to ask a couple of questions. First of all, it says the DC bylaw includes the following discretionary exemption. It lists a whole bunch of them that we, have exemption, and also reduction of DC charges. My question is, I see that even the exception for places of worship, can I ask you, it's 100%. If they have a daycare in a church, do they pay DC charges?
Who wants to take that one? GM Zagarek?
Through the chair, yes.
So they pay DC charges. Okay, 100% exemption. Okay, business. We see there's a lot, but I also see that we have a grant in lieu of DC exception for nonprofit child care providers. Can you unpack that? What is the grant in lieu DC exception for nonprofit?
Jim?
Through the chair, is the councillor on agenda item 7.1?
6.3.
6.2A.
2, so.
Through the chair, if the councillor could repeat the question.
Okay, I just saw it says private schools, and then it says below, the private school non-residential rate, it has a 20% temporary partial exemption, but the next one says grant in lieu of DC exemption for nonprofit child care providers. Can you unpack that? What does it really mean?
James Zagaric, I think, is that the right?
What do you mean?
Through the chair, I believe the councillor may be on report FCS 25072, which is agenda item 7.1.
Isn't this it? Grant lieu?
That's the next item. We're on 6.1.
Okay. Daycare, though.
Through the chair, there are two.
Yes, there are
Okay.
two child care
center
delegations.
related, yeah.
So that memo that you're reading is for 6.3.
Okay, all right.
This is 6.
Oh, that's weird. I just have this report in front of me.
We don't have it.
And I mean, I looked at all these, I don't know what, do you have any?
Councillor?
Okay. I'm just wondering, how can we help Eden provide this grant of development charges of $37,000 so that she can open this daycare in January 26th?
James Zagaric, are there any options?
Through the chair, there are in the reports or in the memo, I believe there are three possible responses that are referenced in it. Maybe if I can, just before we get into the responses, set some context in terms
Absolutely. Go ahead.
so this is a repurposing of an existing space. The original purpose was office space. That office space in part was development charge exempt. So consequently, going from a partially development charge exempt to fully development charge applicable is triggering a 50% development charge obligation. And so you see that laid out in terms of financial terms on page 2 of 4. So the full development charge rate is $38.33 per square foot. Given that this was partially development charge exempt as an office space, they're receiving credit of 50%, so $19.17. Then is the further temporary development charge exemption of 20%, leaving a balance of $15.33 per square foot. Now jumping to possible options, if it's the will. Okay. There are 3 possible responses referenced on page 3 of 4. One is for committee just to receive the delegation and take no action with respect to the memo or the request. Second is committee and council can consider a compassionate grant for this property owner, and that compassionate grant would be equivalent to the $15.33 per square foot. I believe it's 2,422 square feet. So someone who can do some quick math can tell me what the value of that would be. And the third is to provide staff a report back. I do want to mention 7.1, which is on the agenda today, as well, in part captures this sector. And so committee may want to table this until such time as committee has deliberated on 7.1 and come back to this particular request.
Councillor Pauls, Councillor Pauls, we're going to table this.
I think we'll wait till we get the other report then,
okay.
because that's all and it said about exception.
Thank you. Councillor
So-
Clark, anything before we table this?
Okay, I need to ask one more.
Hold on one sec. Hold on. Councillor Clark?
He's not. He's not here.
I'm good until the tabling.
Thank you. Councillor Pauls, we're going to, yeah.
I know we're going to table this and we'll learn more. Have we ever given a grant for a nonprofit daycare?
I believe we have, yes.
Okay, we have?
Director, GM, yeah, head nod.
Through the chair, Kirk Weaver, Acting Director, Financial Planning, Administration and Policy, and I'm aware of one in 2023 to Nawasa that we've done.
That's a long title.
2023? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to table this. Do we need to do anything official? Clerk, can we just move on, or do you want something?
No, you can move on to the next item and then still receive this delegation and then address this matter after 7.1.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to 6.3, which is Todd White and Maria Felix Miller from HWDSP, respecting HWDSP Board on Child Care Center Development Charge Report, item 7.1. Todd and Maria, please come forward. And whenever you are ready, please begin. You'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Through you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here. My name is Maria Felix Miller. I'm the trustee for HWDSB for Ward 3, currently also chair of the board. I'm joined this morning by with my colleague, Trustee Todd White, who represents Wards 5 and 10. So to get us started, I'll sort of lay some of the framework. It's really, really appreciated to be able to continue to this conversation. We had a very productive September meeting of our city board liaison, and it was very, very, I think, affirmative to recognize as HWDSB that we have a unique relationship with the City of Hamilton. Councillors Beatty and Taddison spoke, and it was very, very appreciated, just their questionings on this item, their ability and their willingness to continue this conversation here today. So to set the framework, I'm going to be really honest. We and our business at HWDSB is public education. We are not childcare providers. That is not our main wheelhouse. We really are in the business of building schools, maintaining those schools, and delivering the highest quality of public education for the residents of the City of Hamilton. Where this larger conversation comes into play, we are requested by our Ministry of Education, whenever we go to build a new school in the City of Hamilton, to check back with the City of Hamilton to ask the question, is there a need for childcare facilities at this new public education building? And as we all know, it's been mentioned about 100 times today, the need for childcare in the city is extremely dire. The wait lists are a real thing, and wherever we can explore the relationship that we have as community partners with the City of Hamilton, we are happy to do so. We ultimately then have become what we consider conduits for childcare. Like I said, it's not the primary service that we provide as a publicly funded school board, but we're happy to engage in that work where it's appropriate and where the need is, which is universally across the City of Hamilton. The reality here today, and you'll see it in the report, is the bylaw has not changed. So currently, per the City of Hamilton's bylaws, we actually, as a public education system, are exempt. What has changed, and what this conversation, where it started, is really that the application has changed. So when we go to build a new development, we currently have 2 schools. We're looking at just over $100,000 of development charges that now we are being required to pay. We do not have a mechanism for downloading that to our child care providers. We simply have the responsibility then to change the scope of the building. And I'll pause here. I don't want to get too technical. I think I want Trustee White to offer those comments. But it really is imperative for City Council to understand that when we are on the hook for these charges that historically have not been required, historically we have been granted exemptions, when we are on the hook for that, the scope of the projects, the amenities within that project have to be scaled back. There is no way for us to recoup that. So, you know, earlier you spoke to the previous delegate around a grant. It wouldn't work for us. Even if you were to offer us a grant for the full value, we actually can't retroactively apply it to any project because we can't do it. We need it at the time of building. So Trustee White, I'll turn to you.
Thank you. And just to clarify our ask to you today, as described, school boards, when we build an addition to a school, when we build a new school, we are exempt from DCs. Until recently, and recently meaning the last couple of weeks or month, we've learned that the childcare portion of our buildings will now be charged DCs, and that charge comes to us as the building owner. As Maria described, there's two main components, and perhaps I'll save responses for any follow-up questions because I am cognizant of the time, but we can walk you through how and why we build childcare spaces and how we kind of end up on the hook to do so. And number two is our inability to recover the funds that we would pay DCs to the city. So even with a grant, I can take you through in a follow-up why and how we are restricted from that option. So our request, just simply, seeing as we're out of time, would be when you read report, I think it's 7.1, there are a number of options. All of those options are your purview and on the table. There is one option that exempts childcare spaces within schools. We have two projects within the next month that we will be getting permits. Those payments will be due. So we are here as a very last minute effort to say to you, this is our one and only time for this exemption. If those fees are paid, we cannot recoup those. So we are seeking a motion and action today at this committee, kindly. And again, through follow-up, I can give you some additional information respecting your time. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming. Councillor Wang, you're on the list, followed by Councillor Beattie.
Thank you. Thank you for your delegation today. Just a question on, as you're building these new potential daycare centers in these potentially new schools, do you operate the daycare or do you usually bring in a operator?
So that speaks to the how and why we kind of get into this position. So I'll give you kind of a short answer. Directly to your question, it's a third party, most of whom are nonprofit charities that we work with, many of the names that you'd likely be familiar with prominent organizations throughout the city. But if I may add to your question how this kind of all comes together, as Chair Miller had mentioned, we're not in the business. We don't seek to build childcare spaces. And these are 0 to 3.8. These are the kids that are before school, the preschool children. So that's not our core business. But as a friendly neighbor and partner, of course, if we can assist with community initiatives, we're going to. So the way this works is that the ministry requests when we build a new significant addition or a brand new school that we seek advice from you, the City of Hamilton, whether we should build childcare. So we're required to ask the city, do we need childcare in this area of the city? You tell us, yes, please build childcare. We submit that information to the province. They provide a grant to us to fulfill your request. And to date, we have not paid any DCs. Now, in fulfilling the city's request, we are being charged by the city to fulfill your request in building that childcare space. So we're kind of this, call us a friendly neighbor, caught in the middle between the ministry and the relationship with the city, doing what we're trying to do to break even, but ultimately carrying the cost for now what our childcare space is and not our core business.
Okay, thank you. You made a comment of saying most of our third party are nonprofits. So is there any opportunity for for-profits to participate?
There is a single for-profit provider that we work with at a single location, and we have locations many, many places. It's not applicable. It's an existing space. And in terms of existing, so we have 2 active applications right now, 2 more in the near future. None of those would pertain to a for-profit provider.
Okay.
So we generally don't work with for-profit providers with the exception of a single one.
Okay, all right. And I think that's it because my last question will be for staff, so I'll just wait. Thank you. Thank you for your delegation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you, Trustee White. Good to see you again, sir. And Chair Felix Miller, good to see you as well. Councillor Huang was gracious enough to prompt to get the how and why question asked, and I appreciate that. There was, I think, a couple of statements. I made a couple of quick notes here, just in what you've brought to us. I believe there's a statement, I'm paraphrasing, you don't have the ability to cost recover these charges back to the providers who ultimately fill the space, at least from a lease or a cost recovery standpoint, excuse me. But I think that there might have been a mention of you could downscale. You could simply either not build the space, or you could build it in a manner that really perhaps maybe minimizes. I don't know exactly what was meant by that, but I'm wondering if you could answer the 2 questions in terms of your ability to download and then what options you do have to try to recover the money, because understanding the ministry grants a funding envelope, it doesn't move, and it's all you got. You can't move inside, outside that box. When we take the DCs out of that box, it creates a gap. So again, coming back to what are your options and what are you permitted to do in terms of downloading to the end user?
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. You sort of answered your own question, but thank you for lobbying it this way as well, as I sort of nudged a little bit earlier. It's appreciated. Us Ward 10 folk like to stick together. But to your question, and this will paint a very clear picture, when we are given funds for a big, large capital project, that is the pool of money we have to work with. So when we pay you DCs, if we were to pay you DCs for these childcare spaces, that money comes from our project bottom line. We do not pull it from another fund. We cannot charge it to someone else. It comes out of the project fund. So now, instead of working with, say, $10 million on a project, we're working with $9,700,000. So we essentially will have to reduce the scope of the project and cut from what would be those benchmarks that the ministry estimated. We cannot recoup at a later date because, as you can imagine, when we do find a tenant for that space 2 years from now when the space opens, the project will already be complete. That money after the fact cannot be put in retroactively into a project that's already complete. That money is gone. So we lose that spending power to build that space. So essentially, we have to reduce the scope. So if we leave here today, and I will say honestly, and we do not have a motion with an exemption, we will be in the position of reducing the scope of the Mount Hope School childcare spaces and the new Waterdown School childcare spaces for a total of about $550,000. So we're not out of pocket that money. The real user that loses out on this are the students and the childcare, future students and future childcare families and students and children that use that space because we have to scale down their projects. And if we could find another creative way, trust me, we would, but this is the position we're in and why we are here.
Councillor Beatty?
Sure, thanks. And a follow-up question then, just digging into the downscaling a little further, this could potentially be, I mean, right now you outfit, I understand, the childcare space fully. Potentially the downscaling could take place in that envelope specifically for the childcare provision. Can you walk me through what that might look like and what options maybe the end user of the space could have in terms of trying to move forward with that project outside of having it fully furnished?
Yeah, so using that as an example to the question, there isn't a specific way that we would be required to downscale. That would be our discretion. If we were to downscale in the, just call it childcare component of the school, that would basically affect call it the finishes or the ability to equip, I guess equip is a better word, equip the space. So for instance, we could reduce all of the components within the four walls, the ceiling, and the roof. So essentially, we could build a nice box attached to our school, call it the childcare space, not equip it, but fulfill our mandate in making that nice, lovely box. We will not find a tenant who will have the money to finish that box. Similar to the previous delegation, who's well respected, you would probably at that time get a request to the city to say, can you help us finish the box? In which case then you'll be asked for perhaps money to try to get that space up and running. So it's kind of a bit of an endless cycle due to both provincial, municipal, and school board realities, but that is possibly a potential of what it could look like.
Thank you for that, Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Certainly, while I appreciate the jurisdictional divides, I happen to believe that quality childcare is part of an education, quality education, and I hope it would be part of a public education. I'm just interested in trying to better understand the geospatial activity with respect to, you talked about provision of childcare space when you're providing for new additions to an existing school and then a brand new school. So is it fair to say there's a greater likelihood for there to be more activity on the brand new school as opposed to existing, just because of the challenges in trying to retrofit a school in an existing neighborhood? Through the chair.
Yeah, so it's about 50-50. So as I mentioned, we have 4 projects on the go in the near future. 2 are brand new schools and 2 are additions to schools. So if we use those real examples, it's 2 out of 4 are new. The other 2 are additions. And just to give you which schools those are, the
thanks.
2 new schools are Waterdown and what is commonly called as the New Nash in Councillor Clark's area. And the other 2 schools are Janet Lee, which is on the mountain, and Mount Hope in Councillor Tattison's area.
So just to clarify, there's no new additions in what we would describe the lower city?
At the moment, there are no new additions. We do have an application in right now for a addition to Lake Avenue School. Do not believe there's a childcare component at this point, but not at this time, no.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. So thank you both for being here today. You're welcome to sit this one out in the gallery if you so desire, while we engage in the conversation that will take place at 7.1. So thank you for that. I'll look now to members of committee that may have questions of staff, knowing, of course, that we have a lengthy report on this at 7.1. And I'm kind of looking and not seeing anything, and then the chair is walking back into the room, so I'll pass it back to him for a moment. But I believe we still need to, my apologies. Councillor Clark, I missed your wave, so I'll look to you if you have a question for staff or a question otherwise.
Thank you, Vice Chair Beattie. Chair Spatafor, the question I would have is that it would appear that the cleanest way to deal with this would be an amendment to the DC bylaw. But I understand that opening up the DC bylaw, it takes time and it can create other challenges. Would staff care to comment on that?
I believe Councillor Clark at 7.1, we're going to get into that, but Jim's or Director Weaver, is that what is coming out of 7.1?
Through the chair, I believe the process is described in 7.1, but just briefly, with new legislation that, forget which bill it is, but that amended the DC, Bill 17 amended the DC Act to truncate the process required when the DC bylaw is going to be amended to either reduce or provide an additional exemption. So council now has the ability to simply make that kind of an amendment without going through the full DC background process and the legislative process that previously applied.
Follow-up question, Chair. How truncated is the process? It would appear the school boards are sitting on tight timelines with at least 2 properties.
Through the chair, with council direction, we can amend the bylaw as early as next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. So we're going to have a mover and second to receive items 6.1, 6.1A, 6.2, 6.2A, and 6.3. And then we'll get into 7.1. Councillor Beatty, Councillor Wang, show of hands. Anybody opposed? That carries. Thank you. On to items for information. 7.1, FCS 25072, Child Care Center Development Charges. Staff, is there an overview or do you just want to get into questions? Jim Zagaric, you want to just have us fire you questions or you have something to share?
Through the chair, I can start with a brief overview.
Yeah, thank you.
The report that's before you today includes a number of alternatives with respect to childcare spaces, including for-profit, not-for-profit, as well as where childcare spaces are located, for instance, on school board property. This issue formed part of our development charge 2024 DC background study. At that time, we were asked to review childcare centers and our development charge DC bylaw. And while development charges have consistently applied to childcare spaces, including childcare spaces that form part of a school development, including for all of our school boards, the change that occurred during the 2024 DC background study was that while school board property that's used for the purpose of the school board is development charge exempt, childcare space is not development charge exempt under our bylaw. So if it's used for education for the purpose of school board, under legislation, provincial legislation, it's development charge exempt. And while that was always the case when staff were reviewing the bylaw in the context of the 2024 background study, what we discovered is we were not historically charging school boards the development charges for childcare developments. We were treating historically all of their school developments as for the purpose of the school board. So that in part is triggering the issue that the delegates are speaking to in terms of the change. The change is that while they were always subject to development charges, that there was a gap in our process, city process, where we were not capturing the portion of that development that should have been charged childcare spaces. We cannot go back and charge childcare spaces, but just providing some context as to why this issue is now before you. So a few points is, again, legislatively school board space is DC exempt. Legislatively childcare space is not development charge exempt. Municipalities are not provided funding from the province in terms of offsetting childcare. My understanding is school boards are not provided funding from the province with respect to offsetting the development charges related to childcare, nor is the City of Hamilton through our childcare services, nor are operators provided funding from the province with respect to childcare. So it's really that the province is expecting that municipalities either exempt development charges or that the operators absorb the development charges. In this case, the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board they are putting forward the application and requiring the building permit, and that's why the school board is, why this issue has come up for the school board. So through the chair, just a bit of a summary, including some background, and staff are available to answer any questions committee might have.
Thank you, GM Zagaric. Just before we get started, members, if we want to do something like put an alternative on the floor, I want to do that before we receive the report so we can make sure we're doing it all together and we don't have to amend reports and that sort of stuff. Okay? Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just I'm thankful to GM Zagaric for his explanation. So I think I'm still trying to understand tactically here, because I, at some point, think we should talk about some of the alternatives that are in the report. However, what we heard from the trustees was that most of their third-party daycare operators are nonprofit. So do we have to, if let's say we were to go with alternative 3, which is all nonprofits, would that still be applicable for school boards that are looking at getting these daycare centers? But does that mean that we have to mandate them to be nonprofit in order for them to access these DC exemptions?
Director Weaver?
Through the chair, no, we don't need to mandate that the board make them nonprofit, but in order to be eligible for the exemption, if it were to only apply nonprofit childcare providers, we would need to know that at building permit issuance, that the provider or the third-party provider was going to be nonprofit in order to apply that exemption.
Okay.
Councillor?
Through the chair, sorry, if I can also flag, just recognizing we have the school board here in our audience as well. I'll also flag, if committee and council approves that alternative, if there is a future change in use that the operator is for profit, they would then be subject to the development charges. So the operator would have to continue to be not for profit. Otherwise, if there's a change in the model, that would trigger a development charge. And so the onus would be on the school board to report that to the city if there's a change as it relates to the business model of the operator.
So not a change in use, just a change from nonprofit to profit.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor?
What is the opportunity for, say, alternative 2 and alternative 3 to be lumped together? Because alternative 2 speaks about buildings owned by the Board of Education, so that feasibly should cover any of the third-party operators, but then also nonprofit. Like, how hard or how difficult would it be to adopt alternative 2 and 3?
GM Zagaric.
Through the chair, I don't think it's harder to have a hybrid where it's 2 with the condition that it be a not-for-profit operator. I believe it's the last point I made, is that in the future, if there is a change in terms of who the operator is, we would then expect the school boards to disclose that information. That would then trigger a development charge.
Sorry, please say that again.
So, through the chair, I don't believe it's harder if committee chose to go with a development charge exemption for all not-for-profit operators that are operating on school board properties. The responsibility would be, though, in the future, if the operator is not-for-profit, that the school boards disclose that, because it would potentially trigger a development charge, and so it'd be important that the future operator and the school board know that.
Okay, so just thinking about alternative 2, which is the exemption for childcare services located in buildings owned by the Board of Education. If we're speaking about that, that's pretty much for any childcare center, regardless of whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So that's where I'm asking for, and if we can be more fulsome with the hybrid model, because then that doesn't trigger that change, should the operator change from nonprofit to for-profit in a school board setting. Essentially, I'm looking at most or all daycare centers save for profit. That's what I'm looking for. Is that an opportunity? Because there some of the commentary in this report also speaks about CWELC, but I know CWELC can be applied for by a bunch of different organizations. So I think I'm looking at it as all, but not the for-profit ones. Is what I'm asking if that's feasible or not.
So I think it's feasible. What we'll do is, if you don't, we got some questions, then we'll come back, and then when we get to there is one question you did ask, I do have an answer for, because Councillor Beatty sits on the liaison committee, so he can provide an answer in regards to the nonprofit and for-profit, if that's okay.
So just to hopefully, I think I understand through the chair respectfully to my colleague, I think I understand that the concern is we grant an exemption to the school board and then somehow a for-profit ends up in that space. So I jumped back and I talked to my colleagues from the board, and there are two clarification points that I think I can bring on their behalf. Unfortunately, their delegation has finished. Number one, the for-profit, the sole for-profit that is currently under contract with the board is a legacy. It is not their go-forward model. Number two, they would be prepared to bring forward a legislation at their level to ensure that as a go-forward, and this is standard practice currently, but they would enshrine it in policy that only nonprofits be utilized by the board. And hopefully that would satisfy maybe more quickly than something that the folks in our administrative division might be able to do.
Thank you, Councillor. We're going to go through our speakers list and then hopefully get an alternative. At least that's what I think may happen. Councillor Kretsch, please.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to move things along, and I don't need to be the one to move it, but I was going to suggest we actually get on with the alternatives bit of this and put alternatives 2 and 3 together and put them on the agenda on the floor and vote on those. I think we're all here in the same spirit of understanding what this is about. It's for helping childcare for schools and not-for-profit childcare to avoid development charges. That's generally speaking what it is. I think if we do 2 and 3, then that covers all of our bases, and there's no concerns going forward. So I'm going to look to everybody else. I'm happy to move that. Don't want to steal anyone's excitement if anybody else really wanted to move that. So I'm going to give some eyeballs over here. Do you want to move that?
I do have, if you're okay, I do have 3 people on the speakers list. If you don't mind, I'm just going to make sure they're okay with.
I'll give an eyeballs this way, and I think these 2 are going to move it, so I'm just going to be quiet now.
Okay.
Get off the list.
And we'll let the 2
yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to understand why we would have to marry some sort of hybrid, because maybe I'm not understanding it correctly. Alternative 3 is a suggestion for exemption for not-for-profit, period. And I'm assuming that would also include not-for-profit in school boards. So I'm not understanding the need for a hybrid, but maybe I just need some clarification on ensuring that that is inherent in Alternative 3.
Jim Zagar.
Through the chair, the distinction is 2 is just for school board, the 4 school board properties.
Yeah.
3 would be across the municipality. Yeah.
Thank you. And I thought I heard there is a leaning for all. That would be my preference. And I'll try and explain why. I think through my questions, we kind of figured out that most of the opportunities for a not-for-profit child in the schools is not really, I'm not sure it's meeting the actual place where people need it. So if I could, through you to Director Chase, I know we don't have a centralized wait list, but could you give us a sense of the number of not-for-profits that have come online with the federal provincial agreement that are outside of school properties?
Director Chase.
Through the chair, Jessica Chase, Director of Children's and Community Services. So Councillor, just to clarify, you're looking for the number of nonprofits that are outside of schools since the development of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare?
Yes, thank you.
Bear with me one moment because I do have that number and I just need to flip here to another.
I think it's 46, but if you could confirm.
So we have, since the implementation of the CWELC agreement, so this covers the period of 2022 to 2026 because we have allocated spaces up until 2026 at this point. So I do want to provide the caveat that some of these spaces have been accounted for but have not yet opened. We have a total of 252 spaces that are nonprofits that are created in the community.
Yes, but...
Sorry, my apologies. I'm reading the wrong line here. It's 895 spaces that are nonprofits.
Is that what you were looking for, Councillor? Or would...
Are we looking for a different number?
Actually, if I could drill down, and I apologize for this. I'm just looking for my notes because I think it is a matter of geographic fairness. Just one moment, and I apologize profusely. So of those, of the 257, I thought the report was able to break it down of how many of those were actually, or how many were occurring outside of school properties. And I thought it was quite a small number of nonprofits.
Through the chair, so the 257 spaces that you're referencing are the number of spaces that have been created in schools.
Yeah.
The 895 spaces are those nonprofits that are created outside of schools in community-based locations. So we have had more spaces created since the implementation of CWELC in community-based locations, but we certainly do work closely with school boards, and we look to have spaces created in both schools and outside of schools.
Okay, thank you. Of the 257 that were created, are you able to give a ward breakdown of the number of spaces per that agreement?
Yes, through the chair. So of the 257 spaces created in schools, there are 49 in Ward 3, 62 in Ward 5, 88 in Ward 6, 7 in Ward 9, and 51 in Ward 15.
Thank you. So it's fair to say that the majority of those spaces are being generated outside of the lower city.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the for-profit and not-for-profit, I think the report says there was 1,158 spaces. Are you able to give a breakdown of the not-for-profit and the for-profit? And the reason I'm asking this is just to try and perhaps respond to a suggestion that we're favoring one over the other. I think what's happening is the numbers are telling us that it's not for profit, but I don't want to say that. I'd like staff to confirm that with the numbers.
Director?
Through the chair. So you are correct. We have had more nonprofit spaces created outside of schools as well. So the breakdown is 895 nonprofit spaces. That's across all of the wards in the city, and then 261 for-profit spaces. I should add to that as well that part of why you're seeing more spaces being created in the nonprofit sector is because as part of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement, the Ministry of Education does mandate that municipalities maintain or exceed the current ratio of nonprofit spaces that they have. So in the case of the City of Hamilton, we had, prior to the agreement, 80% were considered nonprofit. We have a requirement to either maintain or exceed that 80%. So when staff are looking at applications that are coming forward around new spaces, we do take that into consideration, the status of a childcare applicant, to ensure that we can maintain that auspice ratio.
Thank you. And because we don't have a centralized wait list, are you able to comment on, do we have anything that would help us understand where the need is in terms of where families are living at present?
Through the chair. So I'll first maybe just talk about the wait list piece and address that. So you're absolutely correct that we do not have a centralized wait list. We have collected that data from time to time from operators, and we know that the demand for childcare far exceeds the number of spaces. So last spring, we went out to operators and got information on their wait list. There was over 54,000 families that were waiting for childcare. The caveat to that number being that we know because there is a high demand for childcare, many families opt to put their name on multiple wait lists. So we know that that number is inflated, but I think also does speak to the demand that we're seeing across the community. And Councillor, apologies, the second part of your question after the wait list was about the profile.
I'm just trying to understand if we know that most of the childcare, when they're being included in schools, the opportunity really and reasonably is in new builds. And I'm wondering, most new builds are not occurring in existing neighborhoods or existing older schools. So I support that. I am just trying to understand, would it be your opinion that if we extended this beyond school board properties, we might have an opportunity to match where people live with access to not-for-profit child care centers?
Through the chair. So what we do to try and determine where we are expanding childcare is we look at the access rate. So we have looked across the city on a ward-by-ward basis, and we've determined the number of spaces that exist within that ward compared to the child population. And so there's a target that the ministry sets of approximately 37%. And so we have really tried to target our efforts when it comes to community-based spaces to look at what wards are not currently at that 37% and prioritizing expansion in those areas. The school process is slightly different in that we work closely with our school board partners. They have a process where they would apply to the Ministry of Education for capital funding, and we would then work closely with them to determine whether or not there's a need for childcare when they are looking at new builds or significant renovations. So while we do see childcare in schools across the community, the expansion has more often than not been in areas where there are new school builds.
Okay, thank you. Just a closing comment for me. It's not going to come as a surprise to anybody in this room that I believe that access to affordable quality childcare is part of both an affordability formula for families, and it's actually part of an economic development policy. So there is a saying in childcare circles that thanks to childcare, Canada works. So you can read into that. It works because it enables people to actually work. And particularly, it enables women to work, which is absolutely key to our social and economic independence and our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. Mine is a finance question. On page 8, the recommendation impact for 3, it says it's approximately 82,000 and then dash 1.3 million per year. That's quite a span, but anyways, and it's funded through property taxes. But this, it says this estimate excludes development from the Board of Education. Then I go to alternative 1, and it says theirs is cost is 1.3 million. So are you saying that the 1.3 million for the school board, even if they were nonprofit, plus the 1 and 3, alternative 3, is it a 2.6 then? It could be the DC charges?
Director Weaver.
Through the chair, no, it's not. The options are not cumulative in their potential financial impact. It is each individual option. That's the estimated impact. And I'll just say that they are estimated based on known developments. The level of development in childcare centers changes over time, then that financial impact either grows or shrinks depending on the level of development.
So my understanding, if we do 2, all nonprofit, including the school board, is that just the impact would be roughly 82,000 to 1.3 million.
Through the chair, alternative 3 is the one that would be all nonprofits. Alternative 2, the range is put in there because it's not always known in school board applications whether the provider will be for-profit or nonprofit. I think we've heard today that there is only one for-profit in the school boards, so the impact in alternative 2 would be closer to the 1.3 in that scenario.
Right, but I thought we were doing 2 and 3 together, except for childcare center located in building owned by the Board of Education. So if we put the Board of Education, I just want to be clear, like, I mean, I'm supporting this. If we put the Board of Education nonprofit and all other nonprofit, what is the cost, the bottom line?
So all nonprofits is alternative 3.
Right.
And that cost was, I believe.
82, it says 82 to 1.3 per year.
And if within school boards, if the childcare provider is nonprofit, then the impact goes to closer to the maximum of the 1.3.
Oh, okay. So the max is 1.3. Okay, it's just a little bit confusing, I thought. Okay, that's fine, thank you. My next question was, if a daycare is for profit, are they under the CWE LCC? Can they apply for that?
Director?
Through the chair, yes, they can. Both nonprofit and for-profit childcare centers are eligible to apply. But as I was sharing earlier, it is one of the considerations that we take into account so that we can ensure that we're maintaining at least 80% nonprofit across the city.
And do you know how many have applied for the for profit? Why wouldn't they apply? Like, how many have applied for CWE LLCC?
Director, whenever you find that number.
I'm just flipping here to a report, so apologies. So this number, I will say, is a few months old. We would need to update these. I'm referencing a report that came forward earlier in the spring. But we did have at that time a total number of 46 applicants through CWELC. And I don't believe that I have a breakdown between the nonprofit and for-profit, so I can't give you numbers. What I can say, though, just is that we tend to see a higher number of for-profit applications compared to nonprofit. So while we are approving more of the nonprofit, we have had quite a few nonprofit applications. They just have not necessarily all been approved.
Okay.
And if you're looking for numbers, that's something we'd have to take offline.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just wondering if they could apply, but obviously they can. I just sometimes don't understand why they wouldn't be nonprofit, because even if you're a nonprofit, you still have to pay your directors and everybody else, you know. So why wouldn't all the daycare say they're nonprofit?
Through the chair, so why would they choose not to? Why would they choose not to be? I think that's an individual business decision that each individual operator makes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Clark followed by Councillor Beatty. Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. So if I heard everything correctly, alternative 3 will capture not-for-profit child care centers with an exemption for the DCs. So both the earlier delegate as well as the school board, they would have that DC exemption. And I believe I heard a commitment from the school board to bring forth a policy whereby they would ensure that all future daycare centers on their property would be not-for-profit providers. So if the two were combined in that manner, we're covering all the bases. So I would suggest that alternative 3 would be the best option available to us. And based on Mr. Weaver's statement, the new legislation enables us to do this relatively quickly in terms of amending the DC bylaw. So I think option 3 would make the most sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Beatty is our last speaker, so if anybody has any comments, please get on the list because I'd like to move this right after. Thank you.
So I will move right after this, but I did want to just respond to Councillor Clark, and my preference is going to be to move 2 and 3, and I'll explain why. While option 3 does provide for relief for DCs for nonprofit providers, the board itself is not a nonprofit provider. It's not a provider in any way, shape, or form. When they go to the permit and application process, when they're submitting the paperwork, they do not yet have a provider for that space. So in order to be sure that we are providing DC credits for the nonprofits and the board itself, which is not a provider, that's why I am moving 2 and 3 as the alternative, because the actual provider, who will be a nonprofit, won't be attached to that site until far later in the process, potentially years later. So in order to make sure that we have this airtight, I'm asking for the exemption to be for boards and nonprofits, but very specifically separately, not trying to hope that number 3 covers everything. I really need it spelled out, the 2 very unique entities that we're trying to exempt here. Hopefully that provides some clarity. Happy to take a response from Councillor Clark if I've muddied the water for him in any way, but that is the preference in order to move this forward.
Jim Zagaric, did you hear the concern there in regards to the school boards when they apply for their permit may not have a provider, which would not, they wouldn't get the exemption unless we included school boards, not just non-for-profit providers. I'll let you answer.
Through the chair, and I'll invite Director Weaver if I need to be corrected. As I understand, moving both alternatives 2 and 3 will reduce the administrative burden for both the school board and the city. So to move alternative 3 would require the creation of agreements between the 2 entities. By moving alternatives 2 and 3 voids that body of work. And as it relates to both delegations today, they would both be, the alternatives would support their ask of the committee today.
Councillor Beatty?
That is what our hope is. So I'm in agreement with the general manager and ready to move alternatives 2 and 3 at the appropriate time with Councillor Taddison as my seconder.
Councillor Cooper, I have you on the list.
If we're, through you, Chair, if we're doing 2 and 3, I just want to make sure that we've got the protection in place so we're not subsidizing for-profit daycares. So go back to the school board to say, remind me again, what's the assurance that we're not getting for-profit daycares? I know there's one grandfathered, but going forward, I want something slipping through the cracks on this, right? So I want some assurances.
How do we get the I guess, document or legislation, whatever we want to call it, that the school boards will be non-for-profit only, and that might be something we need to add into 2 and 3. So if you're okay with that, we'll get Councillor Beatty and Taddison to move, and then we'll add that caveat in so we don't miss it, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty?
Perfectly understand where Councillor Cooper is coming from, and that is the intent. We don't want something slipping through the cracks. We have a commitment from the board chair, who's sitting in the audience, to bring forward legislation at their point. We'll also need to bring this to the HWCDSB liaison committee through that channel to make them aware. And our French partners as well. I don't know what their situation may be, but it's the absolute expectation that we are providing a credit for DCs, for school boards, with the intention that that space be filled solely by nonprofits. The end.
Okay, so we're going to move alternative, just so everybody understands. We're going to move alternative 2 and 3. It's moved by Councillor Beatty, seconded by Councillor Taddison, and we are going to add in there, if we can, Clerk, that non-for-profits are the only provider we will give credits to within the school board.
So I've just combined two alternatives 2 and 3 from the report and combined them where they overlap. If staff can just confirm that the highlighted part meets the requirements. I'm seeing some heads.
GM Zagaric.
Through the chair, if I could suggest to the clerk, if we can continue with both alternatives as independent, and we have some proposed changes in the language to capture what we just heard with respect to not-for-profit and school boards, as well as reducing the administrative burden. So with respect to alternative 2, and for the benefit of committee as well, alternative 2, page 7 of 10, recommendation revisions under section Roman numeral I, subsection G. I'll let Tamara just confirm she's there. Perfect. Be reworded to a child care center operated by a not-for-profit child care provider and located in a building owned by a Board of Education. Operated by a not-for-profit child care provider and located. And through the chair, we'll clean up the language before council to align with our bylaw language. But just in terms of the intent, to capture the intent.
And so staff is good with this here?
Yes, and then with respect to alternative 3, so page 9 of 10. Oh, sorry, apologize. I was waiting for you and you're waiting for me. We would ask that we strike section B, which is the direction that staff, we would no longer need the direction to report back to AFNA committee with recommendations regarding delegated authority. And then we would just work with legal before council to ensure that all of the proper authorities are in place and council when this is before council.
Okay, so staff is good with it. Members, I know if anybody has any questions, I know Councillor Wang has one. If anybody else has any questions on the amendments, please let me know.
Just a question around timeliness of this. So as we're approving this today, it goes in front of council, it gets ratified at council, which means that we don't, then Eden from Cedar can feasibly feel comfortable that this is in place. Is that correct?
Jim Zagaric, timeline?
Through the chair, as we understand the amendments will reflect the changes to the bylaw, and we can ask that the bylaw be on the agenda for council on Wednesday to give staff the authority to implement the exemptions.
Excellent, because then that fits with her time frame that she needs to get this done before November. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, moved, seconded, amended, created, all that fun stuff. Let's vote. Vote is up. I think. Nope. That was an old one. Now it's up.
Chair, I'm getting you cannot vote as closed, but I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alex Wilson is in favor. And that carries 10-0. Thank you, members and staff, for all the stick handling there. Items for consideration. 8.1, amendment to the outstanding business list. A mover and a second to approve the amendment to the OBL. Councillor Wang, Councillor Beatty. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, electronic vote, please, on the OBL. Councillor Taddison, are you good on the OBL? Thank you. Thumbs up from Councillor Taddison and Councillor Cooper. Councillor Pauls, can we have a thumbs up? Thank you. Thumbs up for Councillor Pauls. That carries 10-0. Notices of motion. Item 10, one-time funding request to support Liberty for Youth at-risk youth programming in Ward 4. I don't know why that's on here. That shouldn't be on here. We'll move on. Okay, Councillor Alex Wilson, do you have to waive rules? You're leaving it as a notion?
Yes, Chair, this is to waive the costs of parking associated with the Dundas Remembrance Day Parade. There's a timeliness to it, thus the waiving of the rules.
So you're seconder to waive the rules? You need one?
Whoever is excited.
I'll take it. Okay. I'll second that motion to waive the rules. Any questions on waiving the rules? Let's go to the vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Cooper. Yeah, no problem. Just spit them out as I see thumbs. Vote is up. Thumbs up from Councillor Cooper. I don't see any other thumbs currently. Councillor Pauls is out of the room. That carries 9-0. Thank you. Councillor Alex Wilson, introduce your motion, and if you need a seconder, I will gladly move it just to get this thing going.
Thank you. As previously mentioned, this is covering the cost of parking associated with the Remembrance Day Parade in Dundas. As we heard at a recent ECS committee meeting, the Veterans Committee supports these. They happen all across the city, but because all of our cities' kind of former downtowns are so distinct, for example, in Stony Creek, there may not be paid parking meters to waive in the same way that there are in different areas of town. And so this is just a unique cost that the Dundas Legion and the Dundas organizers have that doesn't exist in other parts of the city. I think we all agree that Remembrance Day should go on unencumbered. And so this is a small dollar amount from the Ward 13 capital, the cell phone tower dollars reserve of just over $1,000 to support the Remembrance Day, a successful Remembrance Day celebration here in Dundas.
Questions? Perfect. Let's go to the vote. Councillor Cooper is a thumbs up. That carries 9-0. Thank you. Private and confidential, 11.1, closed minutes from October 2nd. Mover and second to adopt the closed minutes. Councillor Taddison, Councillor Wang. Any discussion on the adoption? Seeing none, show of hands. And that's carried. Thank you, everyone. We have no further business. We are adjourned at 12:07 p.m. Have a great day.